Good afternoon, everyone. Today is December 10th, and we are here in beautiful Sacramento at Natural Resources Building. And I'm happy to welcome everyone to the Fish and Game Commission Tribal Committee.
So welcome everyone. I'm Melissa Miller-Henson, Executive Director of the California Fish and Game Commission. Please do make sure that your microphones are on mute unless you are currently speaking. Note also that you have the ability to turn on your video, but it is not required. And David, can you tell me if you can hear me okay?
I can hear you excellent.
Awesome, thank you. I don't have to yell today. All right, so if you are participating in the Zoom webinar and calling in by phone, please make sure that your phone number and your Zoom webinar are linked. If you logged into Zoom first and used the call me option, the linkage happened automatically. If you are joining by phone only and wish to speak to an agenda item, staff will identify you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. If you are having any technical difficulties with the meeting, please contact FGC at fgc.ca.gov. That's the preferred method. That's just the general email box for the commission. Again, fgc at fgc.ca.gov. Or if you need to call, you can call 916-902-9286.
Okay, let's go ahead and call this meeting to order, and I am present, so we do have a quorum. For those of you who are not familiar with it, the committee is the commissioner, so there has to be at least one commissioner present.
And you're sure you're present today?
Not sure.
All right, awesome. So just quickly want to introduce staff who are participating in today's meeting. Of course, we have with us our chair, Jackie Hostler-Carmerson, member of the California Fish and Game Commission. I'm again an executive director. To my left is Susan Ashcraft, who is the marine advisor for the commission. Next to her is Ari Corman, who is our wildlife advisor for the commission. And next to him is Kelsey Laird, one of our analysts, our executive analysts, actually. And then we also have in the room with us Kimmy Rogers, who is our environmental scientist. Online assisting us, we have David Howe, who is one of our staff service, our AGPAs, or Associate Governmental Program Analysts. He's a regulatory analyst for us and also helps us run all of our committee meetings. Then from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, which is our primary partner agency, we have Sarah Fonseca, who is the department's tribal liaison. And Farhat, I apologize, your last name?
Bajalia.
Bajalia, yes. Farhat's with us. He is one of the environmental program managers for the fisheries branch. We also have, I believe online, we should have Scott Gardner, who's the branch chief for the wildlife branch. And Jay Rowan, there they are, who is also a branch chief for the fisheries branch. Great to have you, gentlemen. We also should have Dr. Craig Schumann, who's the regional manager for the marine region. I believe he's also joining us online.
Samara's here in his place.
And Samara's here in his place. Excellent. So Samara Maxey is the marine region tribal coordinator and liaison, and she is participating on behalf of Dr. Schumann. And there she is. Hello, Samara. And then we should also have hopefully Chris Stutz, who is captain of the law enforcement division, representing, of course, the law enforcement division. And he may not have joined yet. Do we have anyone else from the law enforcement division? No, okay. Then also joining us today from the California Ocean Protection Council, we have Mike Escrow, who's the Senior Biodiversity Program Manager and Tribal Liaison. Mike, thanks for being with us today. And then joining us mid-afternoon will be Deputy Secretary for Tribal Affairs, Geneva Thompson with the California Natural Resources Agency. And then my apologies, because I failed to mention that we also have with us here today from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, Randy Lovell, who is the State Aquaculture Coordinator for the department. All right, so this is a meeting of the Commission's Tribal Committee. The committee is comprised of up to 2 commissioners who co-chair each meeting. Currently, the Tribal Committee is chaired by Commissioner Jackie Carmison. Our goal today is informed discussion to guide future decision-making, and we need your cooperation to ensure a lively and comprehensive dialogue. We are operating under Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act, but it is important to note that the committee chair cannot take action independent of the full commission. Instead, the chair makes recommendations to the full commission at regularly scheduled meetings. And right on cue, after I called his name, Chris Stutes entered the room. So these proceedings are being recorded and will be posted to our website for future and for reference and archival purposes. Items may be heard in any order pursuant to the determination of the committee chair. And note that requests for regulatory change must be directed to the full commission and must be submitted. Of course, there's a form that you submit it on, which is available on the commission website or from staff. However, at the committee's discretion, it may request that staff follow up on items of potential interest to the committee and possible recommendation to the commission. Committee meetings do operate informally and provide an opportunity for everyone to contribute to the discussion about agenda items. If you wish to contribute to an agenda item, please follow these guidelines. Raise your hand and wait to be recognized by the co-chair or by the chair. Please share your name and affiliation, if any. Note that time is limited, so try to be concise to give others an opportunity to speak. Generally note that participants are called on first here in person, which is then followed by participants on phone and Zoom. And as the topic discussion evolves, we encourage folks to continue contributing to the dialogue. It's not a one and done. It's not like a commission meeting where you get your 2 minutes and then you're done. This really is intended to be a dialogue. Then note if you are speaking during the general public comment item, the subject matter you present should not be related to any item on the current agenda. Public comment on individual agenda items will be taken at the time the committee discusses that item. Please note the nearest emergency exit for use in the unlikely event of an emergency, wherever it is you are located. For those of us here, we have a couple of emergency exits. And for those of us joining in the meeting room, restrooms are located outside the door and down the hallway near the next set of double doors. So today we're using the Zoom meeting format, which I mentioned earlier, means that you can mute and unmute yourself at any time to join the conversation, and you can also turn on your video if you would like. Again, if you would like to contribute to the conversation, if you're on Zoom, please use the raise hand button to raise your hand. And if you are participating on your computer, that raise hand button is located at the bottom of the window and also at the bottom of the participant list. You may have to hover your pointer over the Zoom window for the row of options to appear. On the mobile app, raise hand is located at the bottom of the screen. And note that you may also need to unmute your microphone when you turn to speak. If you're on the phone only, please press *9 on your phone once to raise your hand and alert us that you'd like to contribute to the conversation. If you press *9 on your phone a second time, you will be removed from the queue. So please don't press it twice. And you might need to unmute yourself by pressing *6 on your phone when you're called upon. That's everything I have.
Thank you. I would like to welcome elected tribal leaders to introduce themselves at this time. We'll begin with elected tribal leaders, and then we will go quickly to any tribal representatives. Any elected tribal leaders today? Tribal representatives?
Rosie Claiborne Catree with the Yurok Tribe.
Hi, Rosie, welcome.
Good afternoon, Javier Silva with the Sherwood Valley Band of Pomo, tribal member and Anoyo and Yokeo descent. Thank you.
Welcome, Javier. Any other tribal representatives today? Okay, with that, if we miss anybody, we can always catch up later. Let's go ahead and I approve the agenda in the order of the items.
Excellent.
We'll move right into the co-management roundtable, and we're going to discuss tribal co-management initiatives and projects planned or underway in collaboration with public agencies and California tribes. Tribal representatives are invited to share their co-management interest and experience, and we have a special treat today. Melissa, would you like to share?
Yes, we do have a special treat today. We have Rosie introduce herself. She's with the Yurok tribe. She's the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer. And she and Victor, I know I'm not going to say this correctly, Yelia, I believe, who is the superintendent of the North Coast Redwoods District. They have a co-management agreement for the visitor center up there. And they're going to share a little bit about their experience in co-management.
We're both just jumping in here.
Victor, you can go first.
I'll kind of come at it from a state perspective and essentially fulfilling a need as well as establishing a relationship. We had a visitor center that was impacted from service reductions, part of Humboldt Lagoon State Park, Stone Lagoon Visitor Center. It hadn't been operated in a number of years. There was an agreement that was put in place to work with an outfit that was renting kayaks. They had access to the building and access to the services available there. That relationship wasn't going very well. There's also a significant village site near there and contemporary ceremony. I had asked a concessionaire to work with indigenous folks that were practicing, and it didn't go very well. After review of some of their performance over the years, ended up terminating that agreement. And then we had a need for actually visitor services about state parks and local community, and able to approach council member with Yurok tribe to discuss the opportunity. What we needed was somebody in there that would represent local culture and also be a voice for state parks. And we ended up entering into an agreement, and we used a joint powers authority. That was the highest agreement I could enter into, government to government, and entered into that with the Yurok tribe. That was a 5-year agreement. We're currently working on renewal of that. So from my perspective, what we had was a partnership that was developed with the Yurok tribe. We care for the building. Yurok tribe, and Rosie was instrumental in this, and we'll talk more, but developed exhibits within there that highlight state parks as well as Yurok tribal culture. There are significant activities that happened in this area, and the exhibits that were developed in there are terrific. They're probably some of the best I've seen. We also managed this with a blended crew. Initially, when we were looking at the structure, it needed a roof. State Parks was able to get shingles to put on it, and Yurok tribe had work crew come out there and do the installation. There was a bunch of rehab that was done in the interior. Rosie will speak to that. We currently operate it. We do porch programming out of there, which essentially puts indigenous voices in classrooms all over California. We do programming. We bring in school groups. We bring in community groups. It's also used by some council members for tribal gatherings of folks, constituents. And we staff it with whomever is available. So in leaner times, who has dollars, who has staff available, you'll go in there, you may be talking to a state park personnel, or you may be talking to a tribal staff member. It's been a positive experience. And what it has done is created an enrichment for all those folks that roll up and down Highway 101 and stop to take a look at the lagoons. The conversations that have been had in there, I've been a part of a number of them, but there are thousands more that have happened. It's enriching for folks. They get a touch of who were the original stewards of this land? What did it look like? What were those activities? And you have first person narratives. It's coming from indigenous people from this area, talking about their culture, some of those things they're willing to share. So for me, I'll look at it as the bureaucrat who has a area advantage. And it's been a terrific experience. And we have a world-class visitor center where people can get first-person narratives from Yurok folks. And Rosie may characterize it differently. We'll see.
Now, I think the Yurok tribe, Chapek Aketa is, or Stelnagoon is, in the heart of our ancestral territory. It's one of those places that, ended up in state park control, but still really, the descendants and, the families that have lived there for generations, pre-contact, they've maintained a really close connection to that place. As Yurok people, we have villages that we represent, and individual families that come from those places. And, our role really is to support them. So, one of the first things that we did, and we kind of floated this idea is, are the descendants from that place okay with it? Do they want us, to come in and, create exhibits? What do they want them to look like? And so, we really started to work on that. And, we retold the story that was told there. Even though there was a kayak company, the state park had their pretty standard interpretation of the lagoon and of the village, and, really focusing on like the archaeological, focusing on, everything in the past tense, and, kind of glossing over, the disruption that happened in particular at that village. And so, our team came in, myself and actually all women's crew, both from the tribe and from the state park, and actually renovated the building ourselves. And what, I like to look at as the highlight and like what co-management really means is a true meaningful partnership. You actually have to have trust, you have to have the ability to work together. And, Chapek Aketa really is the epitome of that. It brought community together, it brought the tribal government together, it brought the state park, and even just, employees of the state park coming through and having a place to stop and, coming in and visiting and learning more. As Victor said, I feel, have been very successful in the last few years we've been open. We've reached a lot of people. With the ports program, we've done kayak, we have kayak rentals there, but we've also done programming on the kayaks. We've done school groups, we've done community groups, we've hosted delegates, we've hosted numerous people that have come through the area, and then just visitors that stop in. And every time it's a beautiful experience there. And it took a lot of determination on the tribe's part. I learned something, that the tribe asked to do this, 15 years ago, from the state park, is to start to take over some of the interpretation. And that wasn't possible until we really started to develop these relationships with, the state and, Victor, in the North Coast, and be able to really start to see what change can look like. There's a multitude of things that we do, with the state park, and we have some great, projects coming up. We have particular co-management with RAL, which is actually tribally owned property, but will be co-managed with Redwood National State Park. We have gathering MOU. We have co-management of cultural resources. I mean, we're doing a lot, and I think a lot of state agencies are, and it's always great to kind of see an example of a project that's been out there for a little while and really is it's working well. We're really excited to see where the lagoon's going to go. The exhibits are great, the staff are great, but we're also just starting. So there's going to be great things coming from there. And, we're always open to questions. If anybody on this call is ever, in the area, please reach out and stop by. Make sure we're open first because we're in our lull season right now. But we welcome everybody to come visit.
I want to add one thing, and I've heard it from a couple of different people. So younger folks, maybe in their 20s, teens, early 30s, they're traveling by with relatives. It may be mom, dad, and or uncle. And they talk about state parks and they talk about, usually they touch on some negative experience they had as kids. And for the visitor center, there were a lot of long-time residents all their lives on the coast who had never stopped in there, tribal members. And now they go by there and go in. They see themselves reflected in exhibits, in staff. And I think that's one of the most meaningful things that we've been able to, that's come out of this. So we've touched a lot of people, but those folks that had that negative touch with state parks now have a different datum for what they think about. We've entered into MOUs with numerous tribes in the district. We've got 14 federally recognized tribes. We've tried to welcome community and establish relationships. And that's what it's really about, are those relationships. We're doing something over at Sume State Park. We're able to reclaim that name a couple of years ago. There's a reconstructed Yurok village there. There's also a native garden that's there. We're doing rehab stuff on that now with Trinidad Rancheria and other Yurok folks in the area. So it's, the opportunities are there. You establish the relationships and people talk to people and all kinds of good ideas bubble up. What we've been able to do with gathering and the MOUs is tremendous. We even have, natural resource staff. They're out there doing surveys, rare plant surveys for whatever project or whatever initiative we're looking to support. And they actually came to me and asked, can we start, I see a hazel patch, I see an iris patch. Is that something we could put GPS on to give people access to it? And the answer is yes. So I've got written on my thing here. You talk about relationships, and relationships, you have to build that trust. And what I talk about with that is trust is a prelude to risk. So we had a trusting relationship. You enter into a business agreement around cultural matters, visitor center, and you have to trust. And there's risk involved in that. I found everything that I've endeavored in up in this area to be positive experiences. There may be learning points along the way, but overall positive experiences. And they don't happen without relationships, and they don't happen without trust.
Thank you, Victor. I personally know Victor from his work with the Trinidad Rancheria Tribal Council and our Tribal Historic Preservation Officer, Rachel Sunberg, and been in numerous meetings with Victor. And Victor walks the walk. He doesn't just talk the talk. He is the prime example of how to engage in meaningful government to government consultation. You could teach the class, Victor, from the state perspective. If people would model what you do, we would have all agencies successful in this area. And I mean that sincerely, because you find solutions to problems and you work well with every single tribe and you bring people together. So really appreciate you being on the call today, and Rosie, you being on the call. I totally understand and support and identify everything that you're both saying. And it's just really exciting. You're changing the culture of state parks.
We've had a number of firsts up in this area. And I jokingly say, but seriously, I want to be the 920th to do something, not the first. I want it to be so common that that's the way we do business. And that's what we're trying to do, is just normalize those relationships with Indigenous people, those first stewards of these lands that we're now charged with managing.
Perfect.
Yeah, we're open for any questions too.
Yeah, any questions for Rosie or Victor?
Just to follow up on what Victor was just saying, I was in a meeting with the director of state parks last week, and he noted that since he's become director, they went from the state parks went from 0 co-management agreements to approximately 55 now, which is just phenomenal, fabulous. So great to see so much of it happening up on the North Coast.
Well, thank you.
And again, Rosie, it's such a pleasure to have you. Hope you can stay on the call. There's some other great things going to be talked about today.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll try to stick around as long as I can.
Awesome.
Thanks, folks.
Any other tribal representatives that would like to bring up any co-management projects that you may be working on?
Victor or Rosie, since you're still online, while we're waiting for other folks who might be interested in sharing their co-management experience, someone has online had requested that we repeat the name of the visitor center, and I thought I heard you say Shopek Oketo. Am I close?
Propek Aketa.
Oketa.
Yeah.
All right. And that's what was previously known as the Stone Lagoon Visitor Center, correct?
Yeah. And if you hear that Aketa, it sounds really familiar, like Arcata, because that's what it means, is a flat body of water. It's Aketa.
Thanks for sharing.
Okay, let's move along. If there are no other projects that folks want to share, we'll go ahead and move into item number 3. Today, we're going to receive an update on planning and coordination for the review of commission policies, with 5 policies under review: code of conduct, fish planting in youth camps, youth fishing programs, research, and naming installations. And Melissa is the staff lead, with Susan and Ari contributing.
Thank you, Chair Hostler Carmison. Yes, so I think for a number of folks, you are very familiar with the naming installations policy. We've talked about it now. This is the 3rd meeting that we've discussed it. And that is a policy that we as staff, based on conversations with a number of people over the years, developed some proposed edits with input from those folks and from our primary partner, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. And so we proposed those. We've had them out in the public realm now for, I think it's about 6 or 8 months, and soliciting input at commission meetings and committee meetings. And so we think we have a pretty solid recommendation in the document. If you look at Exhibit 3.1 in the meeting materials, that's the exhibit with the edits incorporated and strike out and underline. And so today is one more opportunity to provide feedback on that particular policy before the commission considers it tomorrow for potential, well, either tomorrow or Thursday, or which day, but one of the 2 days, the commission will consider potentially adopting that modified policy. And so we wanted to offer another opportunity today to see if there was any additional input.
Okay.
Again, that's Exhibit 3.1. Then in addition, we have 4 other policies that staff is working with our colleagues at the Department of Fish and Wildlife on developing some recommendations. We initially put it out for public comment. We received a couple of comments, which we very much appreciated. And we're going to take that, run with that, and probably recommend some additional changes. So staff will be working on that over the next couple of months, going into the February commission meeting. Hopefully we'll have recommendation for the commission by then, but would very much appreciate any suggestions, thoughts, ideas that people have about any of those 4 policies that are currently under consideration.
And just so folks know, if they would like to review those, they can find them on the website.
Yes, if they go to the tribal committee meeting materials for today, it's exhibits 3.1 and 3.2.
Richard Hustler-Carmison?
Yeah.
Thank you, Susan Ashcraft. Nice to be here. Yeah, so just again, for any tribal members who were not here for previous discussions about the proposed changes to the naming installations policy. I just again want to flag, to encourage you to take a look at that. The new name that's proposed is naming protected areas. The proposed language is consistent with the commission's vision for engaging and pursuing pathways to honor tribes and their history and their current place within its decision-making. And as such, the policy proposes that traditional tribal place names for a geographic location shall be considered in collaboration and coordination with local tribes when naming or renaming any protected area, including marine protected areas. So that really, I think, harmonizes with in concept with the presentations that we just heard about the restoration of a place name for one of the state parks. And so there's an opportunity here, and just really appreciate the opportunity to flag that. It's our intent to have that language be relevant and appropriate. And I'm just noting there is a typo in there that we'll need to fix. But at any rate, just thank you for considering ways that we can accomplish that.
And a big thank you to Susan, because as you can imagine, with the connections of marine protected areas and some of the stakeholders that we had heard from about changing that policy are, from the marine and, stakeholders who are more active in the marine environment. And so Susan took a big role in helping us craft and work through what that language might look like. So we really appreciate that effort on her part.
I've been able to read through that policy and it's excellent. I think that really great recommendations in there and really good food for thought. And really encourage everyone to take a good look at it. And again, it's going to be coming back to the commission in February.
This week?
This week, tomorrow. Okay.
Yes.
Sorry.
Thursday.
So no more time. Tomorrow's it.
Today is the last opportunity before the commission considers it. Now, the commission may choose not to adopt it, but we have suggested that it has had significant review, lots of input, and we think it's ready.
I think it's ready too. I'm struggling and everybody, I apologize, my laptop is not loading the meeting materials. So I'm struggling a little bit here, but my great staff is helping me out. I do have an agenda and I think we should just go ahead and keep moving forward.
Okay.
It's nothing you all can do. It's something with our server backup in Trinidad, California. So I do have internet and maybe I could go into the website.
Go to the website.
Yeah.
We find it was posted there.
Okay.
It's not very big, so it should be easy to download.
Okay. Shall we go ahead and move on to item 4?
I would actually. Oh, we have a raised hand. Thank you for that, Kelsey, or Jimmy. Javier.
Yeah, just a quick question, sorry. Where could we find these policies at?
So if you visit the commission website, which is at fgc.ca.gov, there's a meetings page and you can select 2024 meetings. And if you scroll down to the bottom, it's chronological of all of our meetings for the year. And so if you scroll down to the bottom of the page to the tribal committee, for today, December 10th, there's a link to the meeting materials.
Okay,
And it's exhibits 3.1 and 3.2 are the policies.
thank you.
Of course, thank you.
And I just placed the link in the chat. So
Oh,
if you can
thank
see
you.
where to click on chat, you'll find a direct link to those materials.
That helps. Thank you.
Thank you. My suggestion would be for the the Natural Resources Agency draft consultation policy, item 4. Geneva E.B. Thompson, who is the Deputy Secretary for Tribal Affairs at the California Natural Resources Agency, she would like to join us for that conversation and to
Okay.
introduce the policy and the work that they're doing.
Mhm.
She's not able to join us until 2:30.
That's fine.
Okay,
Let's just hold that until she's able to join.
great. Thank you. Oh, yes. Get back in there.
Shall we move along to the application for the new aquaculture lease?
Yeah, so we have, Kimmy Rogers, as I introduced before, is our environmental scientist. She's here with us, and then online, we have the, San Andreas Shellfish Company's, representative, Bob Brodsky is the applicant. And then I believe I also saw Adam Blackshaw on the list. And so gentlemen, thank you so much for being here early. We're running a little bit ahead of schedule, so appreciate you arriving. Kimmy's going to introduce the subject, but essentially, San Andreas Shellfish Company applied to the commission for a state water bottom lease for aquaculture purposes, several years ago. And because the commission was in the midst of a process of developing a set of criteria for the public interest determination that the commission has to make on any aquaculture lease, we had 3 applications that came in just prior to that, which were essentially put on hold for the most part. And this was one of them. And so San Andreas Shellfish Company has been very patient with us as the commission worked through and developed that criteria, which we do have now. We also have an updated aquaculture leasing process that was approved by the commission, which very clearly and transparently outlined for the public how it is the commission goes about letting aquaculture leases and how it goes about making that public interest determination. And so Kimmy's going to talk a little bit about that today to set the stage for the presentation by our applicant with the San Andreas Shellfish Company.
Wonderful. Welcome, Kimmy. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Hostler Carmison. I'm Kimmy Rogers. I'm the Commission's environmental scientist and aquaculture lead. I'm here today to introduce the state water bottom lease, as Melissa mentioned. And then after my presentation, I'll turn it over to Adam, who will provide an overview. All right, so during this presentation, I will provide a brief reminder of San Andreas Shellfish Company's application. Then I'll take us through an overview of the enhanced leasing process, after which I'll share how we've integrated the applicant into the new process. And then that will take us into our shared goals at this meeting and the next steps for San Andreas within the context of our enhanced leasing process. So San Andreas initially applied for a state water bottom lease in February 2017. The application was revised in 2019 and 2021 to address agency feedback. Public concerns were also raised about the proposed lease's potential impacts on eelgrass, seal habitats, and recreational air access. Then in March 2022, the Marine Resources Committee directed staff to develop a standardized criteria for evaluating whether a lease application is in the public interest. These criteria were finalized in August 2023 and are included in Exhibit 5.2 of your materials. Concurrently, the Commission approved an enhanced leasing process that now puts public interest determination decision to a later stage. So let's take a look at the enhanced leasing process as a whole. It is composed of 4 parts. Phase 0 is the enhanced pre-application agency coordination and project design phase. Phase 1 is the initial vetting and scoping of concerns phase. Phase 2 is the in-depth analysis and applying considerations criteria phase. And lastly, the commission decision on whether or not to grant a lease is made in phase 3. If a lease application is approved, it continues onward with other permitting processes as it needs. Importantly, the commission decision is informed by a couple of key tools in this process. The first is robust CEQA review, and the second is the public interest evaluation criteria the commission approved in August 2023. The criteria are divided into two parts and are reviewed during different stages of the enhanced leasing process. The requirements criterion answers whether a proposed project is legal under existing laws and regulations related to aquaculture. It also includes direction for staff to reach out to Native American Heritage Commission to conduct a secret lands file search for the proposed project. The answers to the inquiries associated with the requirements criteria are black and white in nature. Conversely, the considerations criteria will require more extensive review as it includes environmental, social, economic, and cultural factors that may be reasonably anticipated for consideration during planning, evaluation, and decision-making processes. The requirements and considerations criteria are evaluated at different times during the process. The requirements are evaluated in phase 1 of the enhanced leasing process, and the considerations criteria are evaluated in phase 2. Okay, so that was the overview of the enhanced leasing process. And now we'll dig into how we've integrated San Andreas into it by beginning with phase 0, the enhanced pre-application coordination and project design phase. In June, commission and department staffs facilitated an interagency meeting with various state and federal agency representatives in San Andreas Shellfish Company. The goals of this meeting was to firstly help guide the applicant through the beginnings of a challenging and complicated process and provide them with adequate tools and resources. Secondly, enhance our agency partnerships by improving the flow of communication regarding lease applications. And thirdly, we wanted to ensure adequate CEQA analysis for use by partner agencies as needed. We found this meeting in June with agency representatives and the applicant in one virtual room together to be beneficial for both the agencies and the applicant, and appreciated the opportunity for us all to be there to help answer any questions. So after incorporating feedback from the interagency meeting, San Andreas resubmitted their project and commission and department staffs initiated the requirements review. The requirements criterion has 7 associated inquiries to confirm whether or not an application meets legality under existing laws, regulation, or entitlements related to aquaculture. Exhibit 5.3 provides more details on how we, in partnership with the department, conducted that review and how the associated inquiries were confirmed in regard to San Andreas's application. Once the requirements were confirmed, we notified tribes in the area via letter about the proposed project to invite them to either meet directly with staff, meet with the applicant and staff, and or to attend the marine resources or tribal committee meetings. So that brings us to today. Today is an opportunity for San Andreas to present their project, including how it's been modified over time, and to answer any questions. Today also provides an opportunity for anyone in today's meeting to share concerns or opportunities with the lease application, including any public interest considerations, criteria to emphasize during CEQA review. I want to emphasize that we're still in phase 1 of the enhanced leasing process. So while today marks a milestone, there's still quite a bit of review left to do for this application. There are also still opportunities for tribes to engage directly while the project is still relatively early in the process. Following today's meeting and this week's commission meeting, we can begin initiating phase 2, which is the CEQA initial study and subsequent CEQA and public interest analyses. Lastly, I stated this as at the Marine Resources Committee, but I would like to share again a heartfelt thank you to Bob Brodsky and Adam Wagshaw for the amount of patience they've had throughout this process and for being willing to be the first to be integrated into it. And I also want to express thanks to department staff, including Randy Lovell, who's here today in person, Jessica Gerardo, Kirsten Ramey, and Sarah Briley. We're grateful for the partnership and helping us improve this leasing process. Thank you. And with that, I will turn it over to Adam and pull up his presentation.
Thank you, Kimmy.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. Thank you, Kimmy, and to Randy and other staff. And I do think this is a good process and beneficial towards permitting efficiency and meeting public interest and so forth. So, and Kimmy, thank you for all the organizing you've been doing around meetings and so forth. I'm Adam Wagshaw. I'm with Moffitt and Nickel. We're a consultant to Bob on this project. Bob is also in attendance, and we can answer questions as I go here or at the end. You can go to the next slide, please.
It's very nice to see you, Adam. I haven't seen you in a long time.
I know, it's good to see you too, Jackie and Melissa. We're all together wearing different hats than when we were together previously. Anyway, so this project is at near the entrance of Tomales Bay. And if people don't know Tomales Bay, the entrance is about 40 miles north of the entrance of San Francisco Bay. Next slide. This map we want to show it depicts some changes that were made to the spatial footprint of the project. So the initial footprint included all of those 3 sort of purple hash marked polygons, 3 of them. And then through consultation with stakeholders and agencies and data mining, I guess, if you will, there is identification of where eelgrass occurs. And we found that looking at different years of eelgrass data, it's very persistent and consistent in where it occurs. There's also data obtained regarding high use areas for clamming and where seal haulouts are, as well as where there's primary navigation routes for recreational and commercial vessels. And so based upon those potentially conflicting uses, the westernmost area, polygon there, was removed, again, to avoid high-use clam areas, navigation channels, eelgrass, and seal haulouts. So on the next slide, please. So this shows then the resulting and current proposed project area, again, after removing that western area to avoid those potential conflicts. And what we are pursuing permits for now is about 34 acres of intertidal culture area and about 5 acres of subtidal culture area. Next slide. There would be clam, oyster, scallop, and mussels species cultured at these sites. And then also native algae species would just be sort of opportunistically harvested off the culture gear for commercial purposes as it grows. And no structures being proposed specific to culturing algae, just opportunistically harvested off the shellfish growing structures. Next slide. I guess about 7 different types of methods are being proposed, which I'll just gonna flip through pretty quickly one at a time. This is a really short presentation, but we can obviously answer questions. So next slide. So this is the first of the proposed methods, and this, as the name indicates, would occur in intertidal areas in which either baskets or bags which contain the shellfish that are growing are suspended off the bottom with long lines. Next slide. Next method is this is where bags are put directly on the ground containing shellfish to grow. Next slide. Another deviation is to put either bags or baskets containing shellfish on racks. And these are typically rebar racks that suspend the cultured organisms off the bottom like that. Next slide. Another variation, now we've moved into subtidal areas that are permanently inundated with water versus intertidal. Really similar to the intertidal longline system, bags or baskets suspended off a line, but in this case in subtidal areas. Next slide. The bags or baskets could also be suspended into the water off of floats. Next slide. Rafts are also proposed. So these would be aluminum or timber framed rafts with a maximum size of 25 by 12 feet. And then suspended down into the water column from the rafts are baskets, bags, or trays containing the growing shellfish. Next slide. And this is a sort of just a variation on those rafts. And this is a typical thing, and they're called floating upwelling systems, or flupsies. And this is where you add to the raft a paddle wheel or propeller that's actively pushing water through the shellfish. So it does a couple things to aid in growth. It's providing fresh, fully oxygenated water, if you will, to the shellfish. And it also stirs and moves the shellfish a little bit, which helps with growing a more desirable product, I believe, you know, harder shells and yeah, prettier, I would say. And next slide. And then again, as I mentioned, the proposal also includes an allowance to harvest native algae from the culture equipment for sale, for commercial purposes. Next slide. And as Kimmy well described, we're early in this process. We're working with Fish and Game Commission staff to develop a draft initial study, which is one of the types of CEQA documents, and we'll go through a public review process. And then I think also, of course, importantly for this committee's consideration is to point out that we will be also starting, we being Fish and Game Commission, but with our support as needed, the consultation between the commission and tribes through the AB 52 process. And I think the next slide just says thank you. So I think that's the end of my presentation, and hope that describes the general proposal, and happy to answer any questions.
Has there been any tribal input, Kimmy or Adam? Any
Yes, go ahead, Melissa. I'm going to. Okay, we've received, one tribe who is interested in government to government, consultation.
Okay.
And that's scheduled for the beginning of January.
Okay. It sounds like an amazing project.
We have a hand raised on. We have a hand raised.
Marilyn, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you. I have kind of a question and a comment at the same time. Maybe 30 years ago, I don't know if you were there when oyster farming was done along the shores, I believe on the east, would have been the east shore of Tamales Bay. I hope I've got my facts right on that. Became highly controversial. It was a destination. There was a restaurant and a whole bunch of stuff that went on with that. But I'll make a long story short. They had to take it out, and I haven't been around Tamales Bay for a long time. I assume that the entire facility, production gear, and all that is gone. So I'm I'm rather surprised to see the proposal after what the oyster company went through. Do you, are you, for, I guess, two-part question. Are you aware of what happened with the oyster production company in Tamales Bay? And how would your or this project mitigate the same types of objections and problems that they faced? Thank you.
Do you want me to comment on this, or?
Yeah, I think she's asking that you or Bob to address whether or not you're familiar with what occurred previously which we just comment that Tomales Bay still has quite a bit of aquaculture occurring. Marilyn, if you weren't aware, aquaculture is still very much a prevalent activity in that bay. And there is in fact some food establishments that are established around the bay, specifically serving those products so that locally grown seafood products are served locally. But would love for you or Bob to address as much or little as you want of Marilyn's question.
Yeah, I don't have anything beyond that. I was going to point out the same thing, unless, Marilyn, were you indicating that there was a farm in the same area previously near the entrance, or were you just commenting on the other farms that Mr. Henson was referring to? That
Okay, yeah, thank you. I recall, I used to go over there a lot. I don't anymore. I haven't lately, but the oyster farm did have, the restaurant didn't see, the restaurants plural didn't seem to be what the community or the state or whoever were opposing or felt was were problematic. It was the oyster farming, and frankly, I just remember there only being the one oyster company with, you know, their posts in the water and all the, I don't remember whether they use nets or other mechanisms to raise the oysters. What the slides that we just saw are much more sophisticated, but as I recall, that nobody objected to the restaurants. They objected to the farming that was going on in the bay. But as was just mentioned, if it's going on already, that's a different story from what I remember.
Yeah, there certainly are existing farms permitted and operational in Tomales Bay.
So thank you, Adam. Yes. So Marilyn, quite honestly, things have really changed a lot with regard to aquaculture in the last 30 years. And currently in the Bay, Randy Lovell, the state aquaculture coordinator, is here, and he indicated that there's about a dozen leases right now in Tomales Bay. But the way those leases operate are very different from, and the requirements for those operations are very different from even 10, 20 years ago. And I think Susan's going to speak a little bit to that.
Yeah, thank you. So some significant changes that happened, I think maybe, in part associated with the scenario that you're referring to. The California Coastal Commission did a very significant effort to pursue, to work with all of the growers in that area in Tomales Bay to come into compliance with the Coastal Act and have a coastal development permit. So a lot of operations needed to change how they were operating. A lot of equipment and gear was cleaned up. And that effort, that compliance has really resolved a lot of the issues. And so in this case now, the commission is the Fish and Game Commission that is the first stop for that process. It's one of many permitting processes that an applicant needs to go through. And that's the value, one of the values of the process that Kimmy described is the multi-agency discussion with the applicant to talk about any kind of issues that might need to be explored or addressed, major concerns that need to be avoided. And so that's why it's a very deliberative process that takes quite a bit of time to get to a decision. So the Coastal Commission actions, I think, really helped to address a lot of those concerns. And one of the growers there no longer does have a shoreside operation. It's a family member that's succeeded. The original person is deceased. So there's been a lot of enhancement and improvement.
Well, thank you for that update. Obviously, I'm way behind. I just remember the controversy and the demonstrations, and it was quite a big deal. So I had no idea there was that much going on in Tomales Bay. Thank you for the update.
There's a lot, and per Susan's suggestion, you should make a trip south and come visit the bay and have some oysters.
I'd love to do that. You bet.
We'll join you.
Great.
All righty, well, thank you. Randy, do you have anything to share today?
You all have covered it well. I don't know if you can hear me from back
Just
here.
if you stand up, they can hear
I think you explained it well. The only thing I would add is that Tomales Bay hosts, at least one, if not two leases that have been among the longest running in the state, better than 75 years. Back in the early 80s, there was a farm that was inundated by sediment that came down the creek. It was buried, and that may be part of the recollection as well. That farm had to close up because they were buried, but that farm is now reemerging as the creek scours the creek bottom and reemerges some of the gear, and we're actually pursuing grant money to remove some of that legacy debris.
It's quite a story of mitigation,
Absolutely.
everything that's been done there.
Yep, indeed.
Thank you.
You bet.
Anyone else online that has any questions or comments regarding the San Andreas Shellfish Company proposal? As Kimmy indicated, obviously we'll be entering into the initial study and CEQA phase in the near future, and that'll be another opportunity to see more details about the project and provide additional feedback. And thank you, Kimmy, for the presentation. Thank you, Adam, for your presentation. It was great. Perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Great work. Are we ready for item 4? Is Geneva with us yet, or should we move on?
So maybe we could move on to the
Item 6.
updates.
Let's go ahead and hear from our colleague and friend, Mike Escrow at OPC, item number 6.
Great, thank you, Chair, and excellent to be here. Thanks to all for attending. Mike Escrow, I lead our biodiversity team at the Ocean Protection Council, which is part of the Natural Resources Agency. I also have the honor of serving as our tribe liaison as well. So that is why I'm here and delivering this update, and look forward to, I know OPC attendance has been a little spotty at these meetings, but looking forward to in the new year being a regular presence here. So thanks for the invitation. A couple big updates. So we have initiated a public process to solicit feedback to inform our new strategic plan, which will cover the period 2026 through 2030. Last month, we held a virtual public listening session and then a separate virtual tribal roundtable to get some early input on public and tribal priorities for our new strategic plan. Those were great discussions, but we're also going to be holding in-person sessions in January and February. So really invite everyone, tribal members and members of the public to attend in-person regional listening sessions and tribal roundtables. So public listening sessions and then dedicated in-person roundtables for tribal representatives only. The dates and locations for those are going to be announced on our website and email listserv in the coming weeks. Turning to sea level rise, we are in the process of developing a new funding opportunity specifically aimed at tribes and helping tribes develop sea level rise adaptation plans for cultural resources. So we envision this opportunity as providing funding and support for tribes to lead projects that would identify culturally significant sites that are at risk from sea level rise, and then to create or inform adaptation plans to ensure those cultural resources are protected from the impacts of sea level rise. So flagging that now, please keep an eye out. Additional details on that funding opportunity are going to be released in early 2025. Moving to offshore wind. So in collaboration with other state agency partners, OPC is leading some initial scoping and discussions for a West Coast science collaborative for offshore wind. And this collaborative really would be an effort to recognize that responsible offshore wind development on the West Coast really does require comprehensive environmental research and monitoring to minimize impacts to wildlife and marine ecosystems. And of course, tribal cultural resources, but we are working through consultation on that piece separately. In October, we sent letters requesting early consultation with tribes on this science collaborative, and we're anticipating initiating a public process early next year to gather broader feedback and finalize a scope for the collaborative. So next week on December 18th, if you can make it, there will be tribal roundtables on the collaborative. Information on registration was included in those consultation letters, but if by chance you did not receive that, I will put my email in the chat, and just please email me and I can send you the Zoom link to register for those roundtables, again, on the Offshore Wind Science Collaborative next Wednesday. And finally, wrapping up with 30 by 30, we recently completed a 150-day tribal consultation period on 30 by 30 for coastal waters. We got some really good feedback from tribes and some criticism on, to be frank, tribal involvement in 30 by 30 in coastal waters so far. So we've really taken that feedback to heart, and specifically how we are, what we are considering expert advice. We've gotten a lot of expert advice on 30 by 30 from traditional, Western science academics, but we have not built a pathway for considering traditional knowledges in our implementation of 30 by 30. So we're really kind of going back to the drawing board here and planning and restructuring a new approach to how we receive guidance on 30 by 30 implementation. And we will be bringing in tribal experts and knowledge holders into this new process, really ideally from the ground up as we move from the planning phase of 30 by 30 now into the implementation phase. So just wanted to acknowledge that misstep and really the lack of tribal inclusion initially, and recommit to better inclusion moving forward, again, as we move into implementation. So that is it from me. I will drop my email into the chat, and then would also welcome any questions now if that's appropriate, Chair.
Thank you so much, Mike. Any questions? I know you had a meeting yesterday that I wanted to be on and I couldn't because I was traveling, but I'm hearing really great things, and I think these meetings are super important for all tribal representatives and tribal leaders to plug into if they can. I think, maybe Mike, if you do a newsletter with everything that you have going on, that would just be super helpful. So everything was in one place.
Yeah, and we do, that's a great suggestion. We do have an email listserv, but it sounds like maybe you are suggesting a tribal specific listserv with kind of engagement opportunities and items of interest to tribal communities. Yeah, we can absolutely explore that. I'll talk to leadership about it. I love it.
Yeah, I think it would really, I know it really helps me to have, a specific area discipline, to have a group or an agency send out everything that's relative and current within the next quarter would be really helpful.
That sounds great. Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that suggestion.
Thank you very much for all your work. We appreciate you as our tribal liaison.
Great to hear your voice, Mike.
Okay. Let's go ahead and go to the department.
Okay, thank you, Chair Hostler Carmazin.
Good to see you, Sarah.
Good to see you, commission staff and tribal leaders and representatives that are attending today. My name's Sarah Fonseca. I am the Department of Fish and Wildlife's tribal liaison. Actually, for this month, CDFW provided department updates in the meeting materials. It's listed in Exhibit 6.1. So a lot of the things that we're going to talk about today actually have more information, contacts, more details in the meeting material. So you can go back to that and have that as your reference. I do want to just highlight a few of the overall department updates before handing it off. In our meeting materials, there are various tribal listening sessions that we've already got on our calendar for the beginning of 2025. And it includes CISA status review for white sturgeon in Western Burring Owl. I did want to note that I did have a typo in the email for the white sturgeon. I have the RCIS email. It should be sturgeon@wildlife.ca.gov. So apologies for that typo. We have sessions set up for the draft deer conservation plan, as well as just learning about our RCIS program or our regional conservation investment strategy program. And so those are going through March of next year. In our update, we also have information about 2 of our grant programs coming from the Office of Cannabis and the Office of Spill Prevention and Response. There's some available fundings through those programs right now available for tribes. And so those are included in the materials. And just a breakdown of the Western Joshua Tree Conservation Plan implementation. It's getting, I believe, is it presented to the commission this week? What is the?
Yeah, the commission meeting this week, it's simply being received. So the
Received.
document was delivered to the commission.
Okay.
It's listed toward the back of the commission meeting agenda, which is in the meeting materials for this meeting as well. It's listed with a link back there. So it's been
Okay.
posted to the document library for folks to access it.
Okay.
So essentially they have the next couple of months to take a look, see what they think, start providing some feedback. And then the commission will formally receive a presentation from the department at the February.
Perfect. So we have some of those dates in our update, just the important dates and ways that tribes can engage even after the plan has been submitted to the commission. And so those are included in our 6.1 exhibits. Another item that did not make it into the meeting materials that I wanted to include is the State Wildlife Action Plan. It gets updated about every 10 years. And so CDFW is in the works with hired consultants on a comprehensive review and update of that, which includes tribal engagement. A letter was sent out, letter and email. So snail mail letter will be on its way. An email was sent out statewide last week. But it does include 2 tribal listening sessions to engage and SWAP, which is the acronym for that. Those are on March 4th from 2 to 3:30 and March 11th from 6 to 7:30. And so if anyone has any questions about this or anything else, you can reach out directly to me and I can either assist connecting you with the appropriate staff or scheduling separate consultations or meetings. My email is tribal.liaison@wildlife.ca.gov. If not, I will now hand it over to my colleagues to provide updates for their respective programs. And again, check out Exhibit 6.1 for a lot of the information. Kick it over to you.
Thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome.
Hi, Chris, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Chris Stutes, Law Enforcement Division Captain and Tribal Representative for Enforcement. I don't have anything to add, just happy to be here. Thank you, everyone. Outstanding updates on the MOAs that I'm hearing about with the co-management agreements. Good information and just probably overall reminder, LED remains engaged in MOA discussions internally for access opportunities and harvest opportunities with tribes throughout. So glad to be here and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for your work. Let's see, Jay or Scott?
Yeah, so we have next on the list is Wildlife Fisheries Division, Jay Rowan, Branch Chief for the Fisheries Branch. I think, Jay, you were also going to talk about the striped bass lot limits.
I am, yeah. So there's a few things I wanted to add. Unfortunately, I didn't get some of my updates into the department update that Sarah provided, but there are a few things I want to update folks on. Mostly to do with regulations that are going to be coming from the commission, not only in December, but through 2025. So just start with a few of those. We're going to have an emergency regulation to add golden mussels to the restricted species list. That's going to be coming this December. If you all are not aware, golden mussels were found in the Delta. So we're looking at different ways to contain those. This is an important first step in that. We're also going to be looking at doing an extension of the white sturgeon emergency regulation for the Sacramento San Joaquin Delta and the rivers associated with those to allow for catch and release while the species is undergoing status review. for 2025, our sport fish regulations, we're going to have a fairly large annual sport fish package this year. We're going to have a black bass size restriction change in Lassen and Modoc counties to remove the minimum size requirement from all waters except for Mountain Meadows Reservoir, to help with stunted growth rates they're seeing in some of those cold water temperature reservoirs. The Susan River in Lassen County. I'm sorry, did someone have a question?
No, I coughed, I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. So in the Susan River in Lassen County, we're going to do some regulation simplification and cleanup, reverting the fishing regulations to the historic and traditional trout opener, which is the last Saturday in April through November 15th. We're going to have some bait fish changes in the Sacramento River in Shasta and Tehama counties. Going to be moving the upstream limit from the Highway 32 bridge up to the Deschutes Bridge. This is going to allow the use of bait fish further up in the river, and increase opportunities for catching striped bass and other non-native fish up in that area. Another regulation cleanup is in the Sierra District, the anadromous regulations. We're looking at increasing fishing opportunities by allowing the use of bait during the summer months within the anadromous streams when anadromous fish aren't present. This is going to mainly affect Clear Creek, Cow Creek, Cotton Creek, and Paynes Creek, and also changing the boundary in Antelope Creek. So this is going to provide better protections for anadromous fish, particularly steelhead, while also allowing increased fishing opportunity for non-native fish, such as bass and bluegill and crappie. We're going to have a movement of the Eel River boundary line, and this is just to add clarification and a better marker for people to be able to see and understand, a more recognizable feature. So it's only going to change gear restrictions for about a half a mile of stream. And then moving down south in the Arroyo Seco River in Monterey County, we're looking to change some trout regulations, moving the current trout bag limit from 5 trout to a 5 brown trout with 0 rainbow trout, and then adding some gear restrictions of only artificial lures or barbless hooks. And this is to protect native coastal rainbow trout in the upper watershed that are thought to be able to move down and support steelhead population viability in the Salinas River watershed downstream. 2 more on the large in this main package. We're going to have the trout general statewide regulations cleanup. This is not actually a significant change. We're just adding and moving section 5.85A2, which is talks about the trout general regulations into the district regulations, and this is something enforcement asked for to help with some cleanup there. And then some changes to the low flow regulation sections. We had a change last year where we moved away from the phone numbers into a web-based system. Currently, the way the wording is still reads in the book, it's set up around the phone numbers. So we want to simplify that and make it a little more organized, and make it easier for folks to find what they're looking for on their specific waters. Moving on from the annual sport fish package, we are going to have the Klamath River Central Valley sport fishing. These are the salmon regulations inland. Those will kind of be concurrent with the Pacific Fisheries Management Council process. And those are going to be, that'll be February and, was it February, April, May? Those will be discussed, the May discussion or decision meeting. We also have several white sturgeon related actions coming forward. So we'll have regulations to extend the current emergency catch and release regulation in the Central Valley and Delta waters. Reminder, this doesn't apply to the Klamath or any coastal rivers. And we're looking to make permanent the catch and release regulations so that's in place in case the species is not listed. If that is the case, that the species is not listed and we don't push forward this regulation, it would revert back to the current 3 fish or limit, which is not something that we desire to happen. So we want to have a little more protections there. And then we're working on the white sturgeon status review. As Sarah mentioned, we have some tribal listening sessions coming up, January 15th at 6 p.m. and the 16th at 10 a.m. So it's an opportunity for tribes to hear about the status review process and an opportunity for us to hear from you on input that you may have on that status review. And then the last one I'll talk about, Melissa mentioned the striped bass regulation. Several years ago, the department and the commission received a petition to change the striped bass sport fish regulation from the current 18-inch minimum 2-fish limit to a 20-inch slot limit, still maintaining the 2-fish bag limit. Over the course of the last few years, the department spent a really significant amount of time and resources to create a very robust review document of this proposed regulation. So credit to our staff that worked on it. It's an exceptionally well done document and review of the state of the science on striped bass in the Central Valley. So if this is a regulation change that you're interested in, we encourage you to read that report, which we can make available. It's also in the meeting materials for the last WRC. We've been discussing this one at length over the last couple of years at the WRC. The most current recommendation from the WRC was to bring to the full commission a 20 to 30-inch slot limit for consideration by the commission. The recommendation from the WRC to the department was to try and get some additional tribal input on this regulation. So we have this line item here in the department updates here at the tribal committee. We definitely would like to hear from you if you have thoughts, concerns, want to provide any input on this regulation. We are going to be going back to the Wildlife Resources Committee in January to discuss the final regulation language. So that's an opportunity to provide input. Or if interested, you can contact us directly through the Office of Tribal Affairs or through the striped bass email. So I think with that,
And Jay, just for those who may not be familiar with it, again, when he says WRC, he's referring to the Commission's Wildlife Resources Committee. And that committee meets 3 times a year, similar to Tribal Committee and to our Marine Resources Committee. All 3 are established in statute. And so if you're interested in that work that Jay was just describing, please do feel free to join us in January for the Wildlife Resources Committee. Ari will be there and our co-chairs.
Yeah, apologies for the use of the jargon. Thank you, Melissa. I appreciate the help there.
Thank you, Jay.
Yeah.
Any questions for Jay? Oh, all right. Well, then Scott Gardner is the branch chief for Wildlife Branch.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I am indeed Scott Gardner, Wildlife Branch Chief. Felt like I needed to introduce myself. Sorry. So in addition to what Sarah updated you, upcoming listening sessions, wanted to update you on some key items that we've discussed before. We're very close to wrapping up both our bear and bighorn sheep management plans, statewide management plans. Our goal was to have them completed by the end of the year, but it's looking probably January now. We've held fairly extensive tribal listening through those, and we've had some discussions and would certainly look to incorporate co-management into, from those plans. And in at least one case, we're working with the tribe and currently developing a monitoring project on bears. So continue to encourage those conversations. Those are indeed big events to complete those, and really using modern science, and so quite an effort to get to that stage. The other thing I wanted to update you on is chronic wasting disease. We're deep into testing from our first year, both from the mandatory zones and sort of the voluntary zones, surveillance zones, if you will. I mean, we want to conduct surveillance statewide, and we have key mandatory zones that you have to test in. that were identified in the emergency reg for chronic wasting disease. We've got well over 1,000 samples. To date, we've received no additional positives than the 2 initial positives that started this, although we've got quite a number of tests that are still out that we're expecting back. Something I wanted to mention here too, I think we've mentioned it before, but just certainly worth continuing to bring up. We also have a grant for chronic wasting disease, and a big objective of that grant is to engage tribes. And I'll just read briefly some of the objectives, not all of it. It's to engage California tribes through targeted communications, to assess and identify tribal partners who are willing to participate in CWD surveillance and management, to identify resources tribal partners need to facilitate collaboration on CWD and address specific educational needs and preferences. I know our staff attended several tribal events this fall. You're kind of nodding, Sarah. I don't know if you have more to bring to it. I don't have all those numbers at my fingertips, but my understanding is that there has been some good engagement there. So we always would continue to encourage engagement with chronic wasting disease, and we're happy to meet you however you'd like to do that. We'll continue to update this committee on the results of that. And then the last thing I had on my list, you're seeing a lot in the news. It seems like we're doing about 2 of these a day now, updates on wolf activity in California. And it's really growing. Let me just switch over to this update here quickly. We have 7 wolf packs that we have identified and put in the public record. Among us here, we've got 2 more that we think qualify. We have a whole process that we go through an executive review team before we put this in the public, but these are looking pretty strong to have probably 9 packs, and then frankly an additional 4 areas of what we call known wolf activity, which fairly commonly results in a name pack. So you can really see the growth of wolves in the state. It's primarily in the northeastern part of the state. And then we have a pack all the way in Tulare County on a tribal reservation down there. So you can just see the ability of these things to move, and they're moving now. Along with that, we have, just trying to get my latest here. We've added additional staff. We have a statewide coordinator. We probably mentioned that before. And then we have added, in addition to existing staff, 2 new staff up in Region 1, and then another one in Region 4. Really focus on monitoring wolves, obviously, and working with landowners, ranchers, lessees, tribes, certainly, just to communicate, create awareness. We also were given another $600,000 this year from the legislature to put into our compensation program. We've stood that back up, and right now those funds are being limited to the direct loss of animals. So that's the latest with wolves, and that's how I had on my list. Any questions?
Thank you, Scott. Do you have any beautiful little cute wolf photos to share?
Well, he does have that beautiful background photo.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's the one that pops up on Zoom every time. I hate to admit that's from Alaska, the one behind me. I usually get upset with my staff when it's not from California, but yes, I don't know that I got one at my fingertips here, but wolves certainly lend themselves to cuteness for sure.
No pressure. Next time.
Next time, I'll come with something next time for sure.
All right. Thank you, Scott. We're gonna go ahead and take a 10-minute break. And we will resume at, it's 2:36. Let's resume at 2:45.
And when we come back, we do have Geneva Thompson from the California Natural Resources Agency joining us so that we can go back to the agenda item for the agency's tribal consultation policy.
Thank you, everyone. Don't go away.
Oh, we have a whole rest of the agenda to go through too.
Oh. We shall resume the tribal committee meeting, and it's such an honor and really happy to see Geneva, and turn it over to you to talk about your update on consultation policies.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here with you all today. It's a true honor to be for the tribal committee, for the Fish and Game Commission. Thank you. Very excited to share about the work that we're doing here at the California Natural Resources Agency. For those I haven't had the pleasure of meeting just yet. Well, I need another cup of coffee, I think. My name is Geneva E.B. Thompson. I'm a citizen of the Cherokee Nation, she, her pronouns, and very honored to serve as the Deputy Secretary for Tribal Affairs at the California Natural Resources Agency and get to work very closely with the Commission and CDFW. And I'm thinking about how do we strengthen our partnerships with California Native American tribes for the stewardship and care of the lands, waters, all the critters and plants that rely on a healthy habitats. And so I just thank you so much for all the work that everyone's putting into ensuring that we have policies and support and resources available to care for our beautiful environment and strengthen our partnerships with tribes. I'm here today to share a bit about the work that we're doing in the California Natural Resources Agency as it relates to institutionalizing our policy of early, often, and meaningful tribal consultations. We as a state have adopted a history full of historical wrongs, and through the governor's apology and executive order in 1519, Governor Newsom apologized on behalf of the state of California for the state's roles in those historical wrongs through wide variety of different laws and policies that forcibly removed tribes from their lands, disconnected cultural practitioners from their ceremonial sites, and application of important traditional ecological knowledges and practices for the care of our environment. And in that executive order and in that apology, the governor reaffirmed Governor Brown's executive order B-1011, which directed all state departments to have designated tribal liaisons and meaningfully consult with tribes on actions that may impact tribal communities. And so the California Natural Resources Agency has a older tribal consultation policy that was adopted in 2012. That was following Governor Brown's executive order B-1011. And it's time for a refresh. You know, the Secretary Laird and Governor Brown and the leadership of the past administration, I think, did a really good job of setting the stage on what it means to meaningfully consult with tribes. But now that as we have adopted new policies and we're moving towards early, often, and meaningful tribal consultations, really with that goal of strengthening partnerships with tribes, it's time to update the consultation policy. And so very excited to share with the committee today that we have a draft consultation policy that is out for public comment and consultation, and that can be found on our website. And thank you so much, Melissa, for posting the link for those who are joining us virtually. You can find our draft consultation policy there. And for folks who are in the room, I handed out this flyer that has a QR code that will also take you to that website and to that draft consultation policy. And essentially, this draft policy has been informed by an early consultation period that we had earlier this year, connecting with tribes to understand what is working and what isn't working with how CNRA and our 27 departments, conservancy commissions are engaging in consultation. And through that early consultation period, as well as feedback and insight that we've been receiving from tribes for over many years, right? We compiled this draft policy. And for folks who are looking at the policy, you will see we have a section that's talking about addressing historical wrongs. We have a purpose and background component of it. And then we go into what does it mean to have complete tribal consultations. We have in here the definitions that are provided by the law that was adopted by Assembly Bill 923 last year. And then set out the objectives of consultations with the hope of really institutionalizing again those principles of early, often, and meaningful. And so you'll see in that draft consultation policy, we have suggested definitions of what do we mean when we say early, what do we mean when we say often, and what do we mean when we say meaningful. And we've had a lot of roundtable conversations and one-on-one consultations with tribes already. That said, hey, you almost got there, but these are some suggested improvements on this draft. And so we know it's not perfect. We hope to get as close to perfect as possible, and would really appreciate people's help in reviewing this draft language and sending any comments and suggestions for improvement by January 15th. The email address that we have available for this consultation policy is tribalaffairs@resources.ca.gov. And would just really appreciate any guidance on how we can improve this policy. Another key component of the policy that I wanted to point out was setting up how the agency is going to coordinate closely with our 27 departments, conservancies, and commissions in the implementation of this policy. So for folks who may not be as familiar of how the state is structured, the California Natural Resources Agency is an executive level agency that then works very closely with 27 departments that are underneath that agency umbrella. And feedback that we've been hearing from tribes is appreciation that we're moving into this direction of early, often, and meaningful consultation, but concerns that all 27 of our departments are doing it differently. And concerns that tribes have limited capacity and resources available to figure out all those different, for lack of a better word, bureaucratic moments that we all have, right? In the implementation of our policies. And so the hope is that this draft, this CNRA tribal consultation policy will set the framework and the baseline of that early, often, and meaningful consultations. And then each of the 27 departments underneath the agency can add to this baseline consultation policy with the specifics that each department needs. Because we know each of our 27 departments have different mandates, have different programs, have different relationships and partnerships with tribes, and need policies to support those unique goals and missions that each of our departments have. But there are some things that we can do consistently and in hopes of making the administrative lift on the tribe side as well as on the state side a little bit easier. And so you'll see that that's another lens that we worked to draft this consultation policy on. And a component of that is the designation of a tribal liaison. And so each of the 27 departments will have an official designated tribal liaison. And then for some departments who might be on the bigger side, City FW being an example, can also designate a deputy department tribal liaison. And those liaisons could be more region focused or more program focused to ensure that there are state resources, state staff available to tribes based off of tribal priorities and needs and hopes for partnership. And so through this designation process, there will also be a coordinating role that the Deputy Secretary for Tribal Affairs will play on behalf of the agency. And through that coordination role, we'll have monthly meetings with all the designated liaisons. We will have regular trainings to ensure that we're all implementing this policy consistently. And then space for tribal liaisons to work closely with the Deputy Secretary to work through some of the more complex issues that might be facing tribes or departments as work comes up. And so we hope that this will be a helpful resource that allows for more transparency, allows for institutionalizing that early, often and meaningful tribal consultation policy, a goal that we have here at the agency, but then also provide resources and support to state employees who are on their journey in learning our tribal affairs policy work and learning how to partner with tribes. So that is the draft policy that we have out for public comment and tribal consultation. We also hope to have another document coming out early next year, which is going to be a draft best practices document. And so this document is capturing the information that we've received from tribes on what are some best practices the state can do to ensure we are moving in that direction or continuing to build in the direction of strengthening partnerships with tribes. And hope to have that draft best practices document out for public comment and tribal consultation early next year. Awesome. So thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit and happy to answer any questions if helpful.
Do we have anyone online that has any questions for Geneva regarding the consultation policy? The draft that she's and her team have been working on.
And I would also note that in the meeting materials for this meeting, that's exhibit number 4.1. So we included a copy of the draft policy. Thank you, in the materials.
What is your time frame again now, Geneva, for the comments to be received?
January 15th.
Okay.
Yeah. And our hope is to have the policy adopted soon after. Also depends on the types of comments that we get in. So we want to ensure that this policy works for tribes as well as the state employees who are implementing it.
And if a tribe still would like to do G to G on the consultation policy, is there any time left to do that?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. We very happy to meet with the tribe and have a consultation on the consultation policy. Our hope is to have those concluded by January 15th, but we need to sneak a couple in past the deadline. I'm sure we can accommodate as well.
Awesome. Any comments? Questions? All right. People are quiet today.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for the opportunity to share. And do you have any questions as they come up? Please let me know.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Pleasure to see you and have you in our meeting today.
Yeah, thank you. And I hope the meeting tomorrow goes well.
It will.
All
right, thanks everyone. Okay. Let's move back to Marine Region. I believe we left off with the MPA petition evaluation process, Melissa?
Yes, so Samara Maxey. Hey, Samara.
Hello, just doing a quick audio check.
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. Good afternoon, Chair Hostler Carmison, Commission staff, tribal leaders, representatives. I'm Samara Maxey, Tribal Coordinator with CDFW's Marine Region. So marine updates were also provided in the meeting materials that Sarah mentioned earlier, and that includes a written update on upcoming market squid regulations and recreational crab gear regulations. So market squid regulation measures under consideration include requiring the use of a rib line on seine nets and rope purse line, moving the squid fishery closure notifications from Marine Radio Channel 16 to the department's webpage, and expanding the weekend closure to further protect squid spawning aggregations. Marine Region is also proposing recreational crab gear regulation changes that address a Fish and Game Commission petition request, updates to hoop net gear based on increased use during the Dungeness crab season, and increases available tools for addressing marine life entanglement risk from crab traps. So more information on those two items and links are in Exhibit 6.1 of the meeting materials. And additionally, we provided Exhibit 6.2 and 6.3, which are informational updates on California Marine Protected Area Network decadal management review and the ongoing petition process, along with the department's presentation from the November 2024 MRC meeting, which will be covered during the MRC update part of this meeting. And that is all for Marine.
Thank you, Samara. Any comments or questions for Samara? All righty, well, I am going to pass it over to Ari then for the Wildlife Resources Committee update.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Emerson. So the commission has three standing committees. This is one of them, the Tribal Committee and the Wildlife Resources Committee, which I'll talk about now. And then there's the Marine Resources Committee, which we'll get to in a moment. So the Wildlife Resources Committee committee meets 3 times a year. The first is September, January, and May. So the next meeting will be January. And I believe it's January 12th. My browser stopped working, so I don't have it handy. But I'll get that in a second. And we have a pretty light agenda for next meeting, although some of these are expected to be some pretty in-depth discussion, so we'll see how it goes. 15th, okay, thank you. So January 15th, it'll be here in this building in Sacramento. The topics that we anticipate for that meeting include a discussion and recommendation on the big game hunting package, and this is some elements of the big game hunting package that were held over from the package that will be introduced for notice tomorrow. It was so big we had to split it up into 2 packages, so we'll be hearing recommendations on the rest of that for going and talking about timing and everything for going forward. Inland sport fishing, discussion and recommendation for the items that Jay mentioned in his update, as well as striped bass that Jay also talked about. So we'll be discussing and potential recommendation on all those items. An initial discussion of potential falconry regulations. This is an item that's been referred a long time ago to the committee, but was on hiatus for a while due to some litigation, and we're seeing some movement again. And the department will be proposing a few changes to the falconry regulations. So we'll have our initial discussion on that. And finally, a discussion and potential recommendation on the take of non-game mammals. So this is an item which we've been discussing for several WRCs now, and we'll be talking about how to move forward as far as that's concerned. That's all we have for WRC. Like I said, it's a pretty light agenda, although some of these items might actually take a while and have quite a bit of discussion. So we shall see.
And that's what you need, is a good robust discussion.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I'll give it over to Susan, who will take us through the MRC.
Thank you, Ari. And okay, I'm happy to give an update on the Commission's Marine Resources Committee. In the meeting materials is the current.
We're sorry, your conference is ending now. Please hang up.
We're not ending.
Hopefully that's not us.
That was strange.
Okay. Hopefully we still can be heard. The Marine Resources Committee.
Thank you, Kate.
Also meets, great.
And Scott.
Thank you. Also meets 3 times per year in March, July, and November. The work plan and all of the marine related topics that are currently on the committee's work plan are in the meeting materials as exhibit 6.6. I'd like to flag 3 topics that have been of strong interest for the tribal committee and tribal leaders and representatives over time that are current discussion points or were just recently a current discussion point and are going to be discussed at the commission. The first has to do with red abalone. The department is in the process of pursuing funding to develop a red abalone recovery plan that will go statewide. So even though the most recent collapse from those associated with the changes in the North Coast ecosystem occurred, in Northern California, this recovery plan encompasses both Northern, Central, and Southern California. The committee is planning to have a discussion in March about what kind of risk tolerance the commission might have to consider reopening any kind of fishery harvest for red abalone. It was prompted by a request for a small-scale commercial fishing harvest in Southern California, but is really relevant to the recovery of red abalone stocks in different parts of the state, and I know has been of strong and passionate interest to many tribes that it's part of the core fabric of their tribe. So I do want to mention that specifically. The second item is related to harvest of sea palm. Sea palm is also one that tribes have weighed in on previously. And last month, the Marine Resources Committee talked about potential changes to regulations that are for commercially harvesting and selling, commercially harvesting sea palm as an edible seaweed. The department has proposed new restrictions to protect sea palm, both from a harvesting method, based on harvesting methods, and also closure to commercial harvest south in the southern part of the range, south of Pigeon Point, near in the Santa Cruz area. I would note that sea palm cannot legally be harvested for non-commercial use. It's just for this edible seaweed harvest. So that'll be going to the commission, and the commission tomorrow will consider adding it to its rulemaking schedule. So there'll be an opportunity once that rulemaking commences, you'll hear the tribes will receive outreach information and an opportunity to consult. But I do also want to mention that the department did work to reach out to tribes, specifically the tribes that previously provided comment and weren't able to reach them. So they tried repeatedly. But there is an earnest attempt by the department to confer with those that previously provided a letter to the commission. Specifically, the Intertribal Sinkyone Wilderness Council had vetted their comments through this committee, and they were not able to reach the chair.
I believe, and with the utmost respect and honor, acknowledge Priscilla Hunter and send her family sincere love and condolences. I believe she passed away. So that may be why you're not reaching them at this time.
Okay, thank you for sharing. Okay. I'm absorbing that news. Thank you and condolences. Sincerely. On the same topic, going back, I do want to move back to red abalone for a minute. I also wanted to mention that the current red abalone recreational, non-commercial harvest closure, as you know, the fishery has been closed, harvest has been closed due to that collapse of the stock for nearly 5 years. And that closure is going to sunset in just over a year. And so the department is anticipating recommending to extend that closure. And so we anticipate the Marine Resources Committee talking about that in March as well. And we'll have an update for you. And finally, as Samara mentioned, there are several proposals from the public to change marine protected areas, either to revise existing marine protected areas or to establish new ones. 3 are either in collaboration with tribes or were submitted by a tribe. I want to note that so they are in the process of being reviewed by and evaluated through the department's leadership. 5 of 20 petitions or proposals are going to be there is an MRC recommendation for those, and those are going to be discussed at the Marine Resources at the Fish and Game Commission meeting tomorrow and are scheduled for action. And so that is going to be an ongoing process. The other ones, especially, and flagging that the petitions to change or establish marine protected areas that have a direct link with a tribe, they're going to start the review process next year. So it is a rather lengthy, slow process, but I think that'll, as the department conducts its reviews, there'll be strong opportunities to bring that conversation into this venue. Yeah, and so I think that, and one other thing I do want to mention is that one of the proposals or one of the recommendations that's coming to the commission tomorrow includes a potential to change a name of marine protected areas that are they're called Drake's Estero and Estero de Limantour, named after, with names that are historically painful for many. And so the recommendation includes to consider a new name for the area, including the historic name. And thus far, the petitioner themselves has already reached out to the coastal band of Miwok people, which is from that area, and hopefully we'll have dialogue ongoing.
That's wonderful.
And the recommendations for those petitions that I mentioned, just the ones that are scheduled tomorrow, that don't include the tribal specific petitions, those are in your materials under Exhibit 6.5.
Excellent. Thank you, Susan.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Ari or Susan? Oh, I'm not seeing any. Then we'll move on to the next item, the Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Plan. I think as many folks are aware, the commission initiated an effort a couple of years ago to develop a Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Plan. We did develop a work plan for how to go about doing that. The commission and staff worked diligently to begin not only building that, but also implementing as we went. And we quickly realized that the task was more than our small team could manage independently. And so with the assistance of our colleagues at the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, we were able to obtain a contract with a private consultant who is providing some assistance to commission in developing its JEDI plan. We are at the stage where we are going to begin looking at not only how existing stakeholders engage with the commission or don't, as the case may be, but also to begin reaching out to a broader audience that has not traditionally been engaged on it at all or on a regular basis with the commission and its work. And we'll be relying pretty extensively on that latter part with some of our external partners to assist us in reaching some of those other stakeholders that we know have an interest in the work of the commission, but don't actively engage. And so the first step in that process is a survey, which KH Consulting, they're so fabulous. They've been incredibly patient with us as we have struggled to keep up with them because they are on top of it and always ready to go with the next step, and we're always playing catch up. So they've been waiting patiently for us, and we've provided them finally with the information they need to launch that survey. And so we'll hear in the coming days that that's been launched. And if for any reason, anyone who is interested in participating in that survey doesn't receive an invitation directly within the next week, please don't hesitate to reach out to staff, commission staff, and we will put you in touch with our contractor to make sure that you do receive that. It is a confidential survey, so nothing that is disclosed in that is shared with the commission directly. Instead, they will compile the results and consolidate that and share a final report with the commission so that individual responses are kept confidential. So everyone can feel confident that they can share their true thoughts, whatever those may be, and not worry about being highlighted or called out in that report. And then under commission rulemakings, petitions, and other pending actions, we've included some information in the exhibits. Exhibit 6.7 is our perpetual timetable for rulemakings. And that is a document that we produce for every commission meeting. It's also posted to our website on the regulations webpage. And that is a document that keeps track of all the regulatory actions that the commission is either currently or about to engage in undertaking. Rulemakings for everything from hunting and fishing to protected areas, as Susan was just describing. And so that document is really helpful for tracking not only when the commission will take up an item, but also for identifying the work that the committees have been doing that are coming to the commission, because we have a section that identifies when topics are being vetted by a committee. And that's really the best place for engaging with the regulatory work of the commission, is when there's an opportunity to participate in the dialogue at a committee meeting. It's an opportunity to delve into the issue. How is it defined? What are the potential solutions? And what are those solutions that we want the commission to consider? As many know, you can attend a commission meeting and provide public comment, but you're going to be standing at a podium, and you typically have anywhere from 1 to 3 minutes. And then the commissioners will say, thank you very much. They might have a question or two, but otherwise they'll then move to the next person and allow the next person to provide their feedback on what the commission is considering, what action the commission is considering taking. So there's not a lot of give and take and dialogue that takes place in a commission meeting, and necessarily there's not sufficient time. Commission meetings are 2 days. They're usually pretty full agendas, and we're always trying to find ways to manage that limited amount of time. So that's one of the beauties of the Wildlife Resources Committee, the Marine Resources Committee, and the Tribal Committee, is the opportunity to have these more casual conversations and delve into the subjects more deeply. So really encourage folks to do that. But if you're not able to and you want to understand what regulatory actions the commission is considering, Exhibit 6.7 is a great tool for doing that. We've also included Exhibit 6.8, which is a copy of the commission's meeting agenda for the next couple of days. The agendas typically come out about 20 days prior to a commission meeting. And if folks are not already on our mailing list for receiving those agendas, really encourage you to visit our website. We have a link where you can add yourself to our listserv. There's about 15 different lists you can join. If you just want commission meeting agendas, you can just sign up for that. So 6 times a year, you would receive an email. So it's not a lot of email. We're not going to overwhelm your inbox. Same thing for the committees. We have mailing lists for each of the committees. And then we also have mailing lists for general subject matter. So if you're interested in fishing activities, we have recreational fishing lists, we have commercial fishing lists, we have a hunting list, we have a protected areas list, we have a special status species list, etc. So lots of places, depending on where your interest may lie, or where a tribe's interest may lie, opportunities to stay updated on the work of the commission. So really encourage folks to take advantage of that. And then also, staff we have a small team. I won't lie, we have a small team. We're always a little bit overwhelmed. But one of the things that gives us really great satisfaction is being able to engage with our state and federal partners, our local government partners, our tribal partners, our stakeholders, et cetera, to help identify and refine their problem statements and the things that they want the commission to consider doing, and then helping them figure out the best way to bring that to the commission. It's really a privilege to be able to do that. And so again, encourage the California's tribes and tribal communities and our stakeholders and other agencies. Don't hesitate to reach out, and some don't. We have some folks who are regular visitors, which is great, and encourage others to do the same, so that we can help facilitate bringing issues to the commission and helping find a way to resolve them.
Thank you, Susan. It's exactly why we're here. I mean, Melissa.
Okay, that's all right.
Nothing wrong with me.
And then I would ask if Susan and Ari have anything they want to add. No? Okay. All right. Doubt we have any comments or questions, but we'll certainly take them if there are any. All right, so not seeing any, okay to move on to.
Yes, please.
Annual tribal planning.
Yes.
So our annual tribal planning meeting is something that's identified in the commission's tribal consultation policy. We've had, I think it's 4 annual tribal planning meetings since the tribal consultation policy was established. We have been unable to hold, for various reasons, the annual tribal planning meeting the last couple of years. So 2024 and 2023, we did not. Our last one was in 2022. But really, hopefully, would love to see us be able to do it in 2025 again. It's a great opportunity for, again, an informal conversation to talk about tribes and tribal communities priorities, as well as commission's priorities, and where do they mesh, and where can we make modifications to be more supportive of one another. And so I'm hoping that we'll be able to do that. We would have to find a date and time to make it happen. And would really look to our tribal partners to assist us in implementing that meeting. It is a bit of work. It's worth it, in my opinion. Given what you'll hear the next couple of days, some of the challenges we're going to be facing in 2025 as a result of staffing and budget issues. And so we really could use assistance from some of our tribal partners. And so We'll be reaching out to some of those, but if anyone is interested and would like to volunteer, please don't hesitate to reach out. I would love to begin conversations about how to make that happen.
I'm wondering if we do a letter. And send a letter out asking for formal comment on it. Because we can pick the date, but that doesn't necessarily ensure that there will be good, robust participation unless tribes, you know, and entering into the summer months and the fall, there's a lot of ceremony going on. So I'm just thinking if we can put out a Dear Tribal Leader letter asking for responses, maybe holding the annual planning meeting sometime between now and May, January and May might be a better time. I don't know if I have any tribal reps left on the call today or not, but that's kind of what I was thinking. Great. Olivia?
Hi, my name is Olivia Munoz. I'm a Mohawk Indian. I also come to all your guys' meetings and I appreciate this. I am a resident of California, in Angelino, but I am not an official California native, indigenous native, because my nation's from New York. But I've lived here all my life and I've gone to all of your meetings. Would somebody like me, who's highly involved in the coast, be allowed to participate in those types of meetings with you guys, or no? I'm just wondering because there's a lot of us that are that have moved to California at some point in our lives, and we are natives and we are part of the native community, but we are not technically California indigenous natives. That would also, if allowed to speak at these things, because we are residents of the area and we do have friends that are California natives, would our input and insight be helpful at these things? Or should we continue going just to the general meetings?
No, we would love to hear from you. We welcome any tribal comment, whether you're originally from California or elsewhere in the nation. We want your input.
Okay, appreciate that. And thank you for hosting these meetings. I know there's not too many people here right now. At least in LA County, we have a major fire going on from northern LA County closer to Ventura. So maybe a lot of our people out here aren't participating in this meeting, just supposing because of evacuations going on and just being kind of fearful they need to move quickly. But I appreciate you guys hosting this, and I look forward to going to the next one. Thank you.
Thank you for your participation, Olivia.
Yeah, thank you.
And so, if I know we also will be announcing it tomorrow, but our tribal advisor position will be vacant. And we're definitely looking for applicants that have tribal backgrounds and working with tribes. So if you know anyone, please contact Melissa's team at Fish and Game Commission, and they can direct you in how to submit an application.
Which we're actually not able to accept yet.
You can't.
No.
It's not advertised yet.
We're not allowed to advertise right now.
Okay. Okay.
Because of the budget situation, the department has a hiring freeze.
Cancel that last
Yes.
statement.
But
Sorry.
hopefully soon we will be able to, but it's highly dependent on
Okay.
the budget situation and two activities that Department of Finance is
I'm
currently
just thinking
undertaking.
about the need. I knew that. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All righty. So let's move on to item 8, tribal subsistence definition and related management mechanisms. I asked Melissa to pull up some language from a federal subsistence, harvest and subsistence definition I wanted to share with folks on the line today. I think it's a good place to begin the conversation to see what federal agencies are looking at, and this is specific to Alaska, but it could be used as just a roundtable discussion and a starting place. So I don't know if you can bring that up.
Not right now.
So I met a gentleman in Alaska, or in Washington, D.C., who's from Alaska, and he's on a federal subsistence committee. And he shared this with me, and I'll just read it. Subsistence is defined by federal law as the customary and traditional uses by rural Alaska residents of wild renewable resources for direct personal or family consumption as food, shelter, fuel, clothing, tools, or transportation, for the making and selling of handicraft articles out of non-edible byproducts of fish and wildlife resources taken for personal or family consumption, and for the customary trade, barter, or sharing for personal or family consumption. And you can Google this and it goes on from there. But I think, you know, we in California would like to personalize this. And it's really important to hear from tribal leaders and tribal representatives and tribal members and really begin the discussion. It's been on our agenda for over 2 years now. And we would really love to hear from you. I'm gonna be reaching out and talking to folks individually, and at our next tribal committee meeting, hopefully we will have a good roundtable, robust conversation. But this is kind of where I want to start, with the language that's already in federal law. Any comments, questions?
Sorry, who's raised his hand? Keith.
Hi, Keith.
Hello. My name is Keith Rutzar. I'm with the Giant Kelp Restoration Project, and I actually have something to say about this one topic. Is because kelp restoration that I'm trying to do, it doesn't really fit well with the Fish and Game Commission regulations, because recreational fishing is intended for personal use, and commercial fishing sustains the red ocean fishery. But I've attended enough of these meetings to ask, why can't we? And one of the things I think we need to do is have a new kind of take that removes the conspecifics as well as bait and traps urchins for consumptive and non-consumptive purposes and planting kelp. So what I'm proposing at the Fish and Game Commission meeting tomorrow, there's two different types of sustainable fishing take. One is a regenerative fishing take for kelp restoration purposes, and the other is a tribes and tribal communities take for subsistence and ceremonial purposes. A lot to digest right there, but this new initiative will require changes to the law and allow for new take provisions. And with that, the tribes and tribal communities can sustain their way of life and Mother Earth. And the state agencies don't necessarily have a treaty with all the tribes, and regulations must be followed without favoritism by all people. But there needs to be favoritism. There needs to be an allowance for tribal take. And if you're interested in this kind of an idea, the diving community and the community of Indigenous people can really work together and achieve, I think, mutually beneficial outcomes by redefining things. So we're looking forward to working and collaborating with the tribes on these kind of restoration efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. I think that you know, we started years and years ago with the definition for co-management. And 12 years later, it's a reality. And so we're hoping the same, but we're hoping not quite as long.
Well said.
But no, I definitely agree. But the process to change the regulations, as you know, is definitely one step at a time.
Absolutely.
Okay. I'll pass it back to Melissa for future agenda items.
All right. So future agenda items, this is the opportunity for two things: to look at the work plan, agenda topics, and timeline to see if there are any revisions that you want to make there, as well as identify any new potential agenda items to recommend that the commission consider for adding to the committee's work plan. And I will tell you that at the moment, staff does not have any recommendations for additions to the work plan. But that doesn't mean you can't offer them. We just aren't recommending any right now. So we have an exhibit 9.1 that's a copy of the work plan. You'll notice in the plan that there are some items that are instead of black color, the typeface is blue and it's either underscored or it's strikeout. The underscore means these are things that are proposed. A strikeout means these are proposed to be eliminated. And in the case of management plans for sheep, deer, antelope, etc., that's actually being incorporated because those plans are described and discussed under CDFW's updates typically. It doesn't need to be a separate agenda item, so we've just incorporated it down below into the CDFW updates. And then the MPA decadal management review as a whole, that process has completed, and now we're focused on the MPA petitions process and the implementation of the recommendations that came out of the MPA decadal management review. And so the far column on the right, you'll notice those are the topics that are proposed for consideration at the next tribal committee meeting, which is in April 2025. Of course, we'll have a February meeting. We'll revisit this work plan and those proposed agenda topics.
Great. Sounds good. Okay. Do we have any potential new topics anyone would like to propose? All right, let's go ahead and move on to our last item, which is general public comment for items not on the agenda.
Anyone online who would like to make general public comment? Is everyone still awake online? I know Keith is.
Who's ready for Christmas? Or for the holidays?
You betcha.
Nice.
All right, guys and girls, have a wonderful evening. Appreciate your attendance today. And just really appreciate your input and all the work you do. And special thank you, Victor and Rosie. I think Rosie signed off, but really appreciate your work, Victor, with the tribes and everything you do. That's great to know.
Thanks so much for having us. It was a great meeting.
Very good. We'll see you tomorrow.
Sounds great. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Meeting is